Hello, everybody. Welcome to Open Source Friday. If this is your first time watching the show, it is basically a stream I do every Friday with maintainers or core contributors, and so we can learn more about their projects, so we can learn how we can contribute, and so we can learn about how to get our open source journeys started. I see that some people enjoyed the music, and someone said it's almost the weekend as well. Like I lost the comment. Oh, here it is. Hi everyone, almost the weekend. I know, I'm excited about that as well. Today you too. Yeah, I'm just gonna say hi to people in the comments before we introduce our awesome guest. Someone said I'm very excited about today. I am as well. Someone said Buenas tardes. I love that we just had like the Spanish version of Open Source Friday, and then we had the English version now as well. So super glad to have y'all tune in. Please let me know where you're watching in from. I love to see when like people are like, I'm watching from India or Dubai or Switzerland or whatever. It just goes to show the diversity in tech as well. All right, so enough talking about me. I wanted to chat with our amazing guest today, so I'll have him introduce himself.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me tonight. I mean, for me, it's the end of the day. So I'm Guillaume, and I'm working full time on Mockoon, which is an awesome open source project that I will demo. And yeah, awesome. I don't know if I directly continue presenting myself or.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I know you told us when we were backstage, you told me you were like self-taught and all that.
Yeah,
feel free to
exactly.
like dive into that.
Okay. So I started coding in high school. I'm nearly 40 years old, and it was a very long time ago, and I'm very bad at math, so I won't do the calculation, but it's a very long time ago, and I wanted to create a video game. So I started coding in OpenGL. And I was doing this, sphere that was turning with some like gravity, but it was very basic, but still was hooked. And since then, I never stopped programming. But I didn't do any CS degree or coding school.
Oh, you froze?
One was really math, and at that time in France, it.
Oh, Guillaume, I think you're freezing for me. I'm not sure.
Okay, you're freezing for me too. Sometimes. Yeah, so I don't know who is freezing.
All right, that's okay. Keep going.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, internet looks okay on my side. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe it's me, and I'll fix it while you're speaking. But that's awesome that you taught yourself to code when you were in high school through like WebGL. Did you like use textbooks, or you just were like experimenting?
Oh, at that time, yeah, it was a lot of books, of course, and a bit of online tutorials that were starting, but like it was a long time ago, so it's not, it wasn't like today with a lot of videos, etc. And finally, I went to the law school, like my mother, and I studied law for 5 years. And
Mm.
so I was specialized in intellectual property, trademarks, copyright, etc. And I never stopped coding. At one point, it was taking all my free time
Wow.
and like evenings, weekends. So I decided that too much was too much, and I had to choose. And I really liked being a legal advisor, but I loved coding. So I decided in 2015 to switch careers. And so I just registered as a freelance and I tried, and it worked. And one job after another, and now 8 years later, I'm a full stack web developer full time, and I'm working now on Mockoon, which I created in 2017, like in August, and I worked on the MVP for like 2 or 3 months, and I just published everything on Reddit, Hacker News, etc. And this has been my not my full, I mean, my full-time focus since 2 years. So it was a side project for 3 years, and since 2 years now, it's more like my full-time job, and I'm trying to make it profitable.
Awesome. I'm excited for you. I love to hear someone else said, I really love learning about everybody's experience here. I think in like response to like how you got here. I love to hear like career changer stories on how like you're like I started off in like the legal thing because that's what I knew, that's what my mom was doing, but I also had this passion for coding. And you're like, "You know what? I'm just going to go ahead
Mm.
and follow that dream of coding." I'm going to highlight a couple more people cuz they said they wanted to, I mean, they said where they were watching in from. So someone's watching from Morocco and France and Brazil. Someone said bonjour, Guillaume. Someone's
Bonjour
watching.
Thomas.
Oh, do you know him or are you just saying?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Someone from Italy and then someone else from Malawi and all these other places. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Um, I do have a question though. What you talked about Mockoon a little bit. What exactly is it?
So Mockoon is an API mocking tool.
Mhm.
So it's first to work with APIs, and if you are not very familiar with what API mocking is, the idea is to simulate an API when it's not available, or when you don't have access to the API, etc., or maybe it's down, etc. And the most typical use case, I mean, it's a very typical one. You have a front end team, a back end team, and they all start together, and the backend starts, and they cannot, I mean, work faster than everyone else. So the API is not ready, and usually the front end and the back end progressively they agree on an API contract. So they decide that there will be a users, if it's RESTful, for example, a user's route serving this kind of JSON, etc., requiring this kind of authentication. And the front end team will start with this information, and then you can have a lot of approaches. And in the past, what I was doing is that I was creating a JavaScript. I mean, I code mostly in JavaScript, a small JavaScript object, and I was just copy pasting this in like an Angular service or somewhere, in a fetch call. And then sometimes you commit the code, and it was code that was only useful during development. So maybe, I mean, yeah, and then it's hard to maintain. And an API mocking solves this issue really well, because you can set up an API mock. And I will show a quick demo of Mockoon, but in 2 clicks, you can just copy paste the JSON in the body editor. You press play, and you have a working API, and you can start coding your front end immediately. And you have also more original use cases. And for example, there is one on the website. You can find an article about that. It's Impala, so the startup which is creating an API. API is their product, right? So it's an API product. They are not building, I think, a website or a mobile app. So they really need to get the API right, so it's used by developers, and so developers are happy to use it. And what they are doing something that they call like UX research, and they are using Mockoon for that. So they gather people in a focus group, and they look at how they are using the API. And when someone say, okay, this is strange, this property name, etc., so they change it in real time, and they refine the API in real time. It's very interesting. I wouldn't have talked about these kind of use cases. So it's
This
good for a wide range of use cases.
This is really interesting. And I think you described it really well for maybe people who don't have as much
I hope.
experience in web development. No, no, you did. Because
Okay.
I was thinking, like, okay, I was like, what if someone never wrote code before and maybe they're just in the beginning of their journey? But you made a good example of like, there's the front end team, there's the back end team. The front end team needs to be able, like, yes, they can build the user interface, but they don't have any data to be able to develop with. So then they have to wait for the back end team or create their own JavaScript objects like you were doing. And then you can accidentally commit it, which
Exactly.
you wouldn't want to do. Um,
Exactly. But, yeah,
yeah.
but if I can just complete, I think there is also some kind of misunderstanding or I mean lack of knowledge about API mocking because very frequently it's associated with API design. For example, when you use a tool like a Stoplight, it's very good, but it's focused mainly on API design. And it's a bit overwhelming because you have a huge interface and you can define using the Open API specification, you can define everything from the request headers to the response body, etc. And very frequently, when you start coding, nobody has any clue what the API contract will be, especially when you do like lean startup or agility. I mean, in a waterfall process, you can maybe write huge documentation before starting coding, but usually it's not the case. So you will refine the contract very progressively with the backend team or together, and usually API design is too, in my opinion, it's too early. And then these API designs tool, they offer API mocking because it's the continuity, the normal continuity. But then you have the API design that you have to do first, or it seems to be like that. And what I try to achieve with Mockoon is like API mocking is the first class citizen. It's API mocking first, and then we will see the design later. So it's very useful even to just mock a tiny annoying thing. For example, I was working in a bank here in Luxembourg. I mean, there are a lot of banks. Um, and we had some kind of proxy that was injecting a header everywhere for all the requests in the development environment. And either you were just doing that by yourself with, a request interceptor, or you could go to the interface and click like 20 times, and then it will set the header for you. But these 20 clicks, using Mockoon, in like 3 clicks, you could save that and just inject the header. And it's very practical. And a lot of people don't know that they can benefit from API mocking in general very quickly, and it saves a lot of time. Even if you don't do API design, for example, with Mockoon, you can save time. You can prototype very easily. And this is what I like. It's like from the beginning to the end. And it's less scary than some other tools, I guess.
Yeah, I
I
never even
hope.
thought of it from that perspective. I love that. Someone said API mocking is something that can be very useful and make parts of my job so much easier, it seems. So they're already learning from you. And
Yeah.
someone, well, I think I'll save this question, but for maybe after the demo, because this might maybe answer it. But they said, is it just in beta phase or fully working? I think it's fully working, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
it's fully
yeah,
working since 5 years. It's not anymore in beta.
yeah,
I mean, the product is also quite. I mean, yeah, I don't find my words, but
yeah.
it's quite
It's,
good with a lot of features already. Of course, there are a lot of feature requests and more things that we can add. But yeah, no, it's ready to be used, and some very big companies are using Mockoon right now. So,
yeah,
uh, how it compares to Cypress and Karate, I didn't use any of the two mentioned here. So, I mean, it's always hard to compare. And
yeah. And I feel like Cypress, I've never used karate, but I thought Cypress was more of a tool for testing.
yes,
Um,
that's my
and
impression too. So
yeah,
Mockoon is good, for example, if you want to put it in your testing stack or environment. So it runs a fake API,
yeah,
and then you have Cypress on the alongside that will do the actual testing, and
yeah,
then when the API is required, Mockoon enters the place. But I think they are not like
the
quite
same.
equivalent. Yeah.
Yeah. And before we jump into the demo, you did kind of talk about like what one of the reasons why you made the project because of like some of the stumbling blocks you had. But I'm curious, like, what really inspired you to be like, I'm gonna start this? Because I feel like there's a
Yeah.
lot of pain points in software engineering that sometimes you're like, nah, I'm not necessarily going to solve this, but what made you be like, I'm going to solve this one?
Yeah, so it was. I mean, it was a personal need and a need that we had at the place I worked at that time. So it was exactly this first example I gave. Front end team was waiting for the back end. That's it. So we needed an API mocking tool. So I started looking into what other tools are offering, like Postman, etc. And a lot of them are cloud based, and we couldn't use any cloud tool because in Luxembourg here, it's not everywhere like this, but it's highly regulated, and cloud is always a big interrogation mark. So we couldn't use any cloud tool. So I'm also a developer, so I really needed a side project to waste my free time on. I mean, I can that's the analysis I'm doing now, because I also suffered a burnout in 2021, like putting a lot of pressure on myself working on this application every evening, every night. But I mean, I really wanted a side project, and then it grew a lot, and I didn't expected that. But that's probably the second reason, just to please myself, having something that I can work with, no constraint, no meeting about this project, and I can do whatever I want. And
I love
so,
it. I did hear because you said Luxembourg has like a lot of banks and stuff like that. I,
yeah,
I understand that they would have like those restrictions around the cloud, and that's hilarious that you like you needed a side project because yeah, developers we like to have a little toy or pastime to do.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I think it's a good time to jump into the demo if you're okay with it. I'll
Yeah,
switch over.
sure. Okay, so this is Mockoon website, and I will be back to this soon. I don't want to dive too much or too long into the technicalities, but the idea is that it's quick and it's very easy. So it's mainly a desktop application that is available on Windows, Linux, Mac OS. And the idea is that it's very easy to create an endpoint and get to work right away. So for example, here I have a test. So that's the path of your API endpoint. So test, it's a get method, and I have a bunch of, a JSON example. And the idea is that you press play, and then you make a request. So here in the browser, of course, it's a get request, and that's it. You have already an API that is working. And if you, sorry, I resume. If you use curl, it's the same result. You can call your API. That's the first step. That's the most easiest thing that you could do, and that could already save you time. Huh? The idea is that okay, I have a user's endpoint or get user by ID, etc., and I want to get some information about this user, so I can start coding my mobile app. Sorry, and then that's it. You just change the JSON, you change the path, you eventually change the method, you add custom headers, and um, and then yeah, you do the call again. And yeah, demo effect. Of course, I didn't change the path, and then you get another result. And I
Ah.
think that for me, that's the promise of Mockoon. You don't have to put API design first for like 2 weeks of refining an open API specification file, etc. 2 clicks and you can get started. And then of course you can do a lot more things. You can intercept. You can soon. So this is not released yet, but you will be soon able to record everything that is entering Mockoon, and then it will create for you all the endpoints. You can also serve multiple responses for each endpoint, and then you can serve them depending on rules. For example, oops, sorry, not cookie header. You can say if the authorization header is not present, then we put a 403, for example. And then normally, except if it's the demo effect, yeah, because now I don't get all the information, but you see that it's already not the same result. We get a 403 because I didn't add any authorization header. So you can start building some scenarios like that. You can also randomize everything. So you can, for example, simulate errors that are occurring not very frequently. You can add latency if, for example, you want to simulate a very slow network, etc. There is also a proxy mode where you can forward everything. So you can only mock partially. You can forward to the real development backend that is running locally, for example, and you can mock only 2 or 3 routes that are not ready. And there is also a feature that is quite recent. It's the CRUD routes. So the idea of CRUD routes is a bit like JSON server, the npm library, if you know it. So it's doing exactly the same thing. You can here link this route to a data bucket. And so I won't enter in too much details here, but the idea is that here you can provide, for example, an array. And every time you will do a get, you will get a list. If you get, you will be able to get by ID. So with a route like that, but sorry, I erased. With a route like that, but that you don't have to create. So you can select only one invoice, you can post, you can put, you can delete, everything is automated. And this is basically a small database, JSON database, you can say that. So it's very practical for quick prototyping too. And what I'm currently using
Oh no, you froze.
assistant, I mean, it's the mandatory AI thing that everybody is working on right now, I guess. So soon it will be part of a new pro plan, and it lets you generate realistic JSON data from a topic or something a bit more complex if you want. But for example, here, if you want an API endpoint to manage horses, I mean, it's possible, and it will generate a fake JSON with name, breed, age, color, is male or not, etc. And you can. I will not generate right now because we would have to wait for the answer from OpenAI. But the idea is that after that, you can just serve the content and you get randomized content.
Awesome. And do you leverage Faker JS in this at all, or is it just only OpenAI?
No, it's Faker.js, exact. So there
Okay.
is a templating system based on handlebars. So why handlebars? It's very old, but it's also very, I mean, it's
Yeah.
well known, so it's easy normally to use.
Yeah.
And it's using Faker. And I see also a bug. So it's good because it's still under development. So I will be able to fix that later. Um, but yeah, it's using Faker also. So you can have like fake first name, fake cities, etc., etc. You can also serve files. You can, I mean, there are a lot of small hidden features. And it's a set of tools because there is the desktop and there is also a CLI. And this is also, I mean, the power of Mockoon is that you can design that on the desktop and then you can run it in your CI environment, for example, in GitHub Actions, etc. And it's as easy as sharing the JSON file that is describing all this setup. So you have to locate it on your hard drive or put it on a Git in a Git tracked folder on a Git repository. You put here the path or the URL and you press enter and it will run the mock for you. And then you can start making calls and you will see here the logs. And so you can deploy it in serverless environments, etc.
This is
And let's just go back to the website. So desktop application, CLI, and there is also a serverless package. So you can use it in, for example, Firebase function, AWS lambdas, etc. And a lot of tutorials and documentation that is always up to date, even the screenshots. And yeah, and that's it. I think it's another broad overview, but
yeah. No, this is awesome. I love that I love the UI of the project because it just looks very familiar. It doesn't look like it's hard to navigate. It kind of resembles Postman a little bit. And we did have a couple of questions. Before I get into many of them, first people were asking, how do I access this? Go to mockoon.com. I have the link on the screen below just so you all can see. I can't post links into our chat because we've disabled links there. So go ahead and check that out. And then I think a little bit, some people couldn't see it because it was a little bit small, but I did see that
okay.
you have a tutorial section. So I do
Yes.
want to, do you mind clicking that link and letting people know that they can check out the video tutorials on your site if they did want to try it out?
Yeah, I started also. Yeah, there are only two of them for now.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry for that. There are so many things to do, but yeah, I'm trying to do all the tutorials in video versions too.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to start with Mockoon, I mean, the easiest one is the getting started tutorial, the first one with the spaceship. I mean,
Awesome. So you have written tutorials as well as the
yeah. They
videos.
are all written
Yeah.
first and then in
And now
videos.
you're putting it into video. Awesome. So definitely check that out, y'all. I think someone asked this, but literally as soon as they asked it, you were answering because you said they said, "Does Mockoon have the ability to generate fake realistic data?" And you started talking about the integration with OpenAI and Faker.js and Handlebar. So yes is the answer to that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean it's using a lot of. I mean, you have access to all the Faker JS helpers, and there are a bunch of helpers also that we created. So it's in the documentation helpers, and you will see that there are a lot of them, like add, subtract, multiply. There are also request helpers, so you can, for example, React. So maybe I need to zoom a bit more
Interesting.
because it was zoomed, but
Yeah.
not enough maybe. So you can react, for example, to the entering body, the entering headers, etc. So you could check a header with the if and the handlebar if header, etc., and serve different contents. But you have multiple choices. Huh? You can, for example, use ifs here and react to the request, but you can also do that with the rules. It's a bit
Yeah.
more powerful. It's also a different approach. You can write a switch case here if you want. And even the headers, they support the templating system. So here, for example, you could have a header that is
That's so cool.
randomizing something, okay, or a UUID. Maybe first name is not good, but a UUID, for example, or a GUID. So this is also possible. Yeah.
That is so cool that you can do logic or you can like pass in a UID in there and it'll do that. Someone asked, is it compatible with GraphQL APIs or is this only for REST APIs?
That's a very good question, and that's also, I mean, for me, it's the power of open source, and it's also like some of the flaws. So GraphQL is on the roadmap. It's in the backlog. And it's the most requested feature since the beginning. So it's upvoted a lot. And I called for feedback on Discord, in newsletters, a bit everywhere, to ask people what they exactly expect, because I've never used GraphQL. So I did a proof of concept that is working. I have it locally on my computer. It's working quite well without the mutations. If you know GraphQL, it's just fetching, but it's I think it's really nice. But it's only what is coming outside of my head. So if anybody is interested in contributing, and when I say contributing, it's not necessarily start coding this feature, but at least giving some feedback, because Mockoon is also very REST APIs oriented, and doing something that is GraphQL is very different in terms of UI. Are the rules still making sense? There are a lot of questions, and so if someone want to brainstorm a little bit or chat a little bit about this, I would be glad, because it will be a great feature to add. Honestly.
How can they is there a link that they can go to if they want to provide feedback or should they just go to the GitHub and maybe to an issue or
Yeah,
something?
they can find that on the website. So if you want, for example, or on the repository, it's even easier. But no, I have the website open. But here you can, for example, oh yeah, it's the next version. So get support. So we have GitHub discussions.
Oh,
We
gotcha.
have a Discord channel, and yeah, you can even reach me on Twitter, and we can chat. I mean, anywhere. I don't really care, but it's Discord or GitHub discussion mainly.
I love that because I often talk about like what are other ways people can contribute to open source besides code if they're like nervous or they don't really understand the code base and being able to provide you with feedback. That's a really valuable thing because
Yeah,
like you said, you never used GraphQL before, so you
yeah,
want to make
exactly.
sure that it'll serve the community.
Yeah. No, true. There are many ways to sponsor. So no, it's not sponsor, but contribute to open source project. And just like discussing it's already the first one. Upvoting issues. If you really think that it adds some value, just upvote. It's already the first step. And then add your 2 cents on the issue and say, yeah, okay, I'm using Mockoon. It's nice, and for GraphQL, maybe this doesn't make sense. just so I get some feedback and insights, etc. And that will be already. I mean, there are a lot of contributions for other topics, but for GraphQL, it's very strange. I don't know. So,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And thank you, Andrea, as well for
thank you.
linking the GitHub. Sorry, I don't know, my brain got stopped for a second, but linking the GitHub repository if people want to check it out, github.com/Mockoon. We have a few more questions. People are really interested in this. In fact, I think I saw a tweet. Oh no, I mean a comment that someone said the joy of serendipity. The notification for this popped up as I was creating multiple mock APIs for integration purposes right now. Very interested in this session. Um, Another person was asking, let's see, they said, how do I know which port my Mockoon server is started on?
Yeah, this is very easy when it's not reduced. Okay, let me enlarge. It's written here.
Okay.
So by default, it's localhost 3000. So here it's 3005 because I have a lot of things running locally. You can go in the settings and change the port here. You can also change the network device it's listening on. You can add a prefix that is applied to all the endpoints. You can add a custom certificate, etc.
Awesome. Perfect. I thought that was pretty clear. Someone basically was saying they're going to give Mockoon a try because they had to implement unit tests for a REST API in Flask today, and the environment variables were a problem. Someone said this is really great for quick prototypes. Um, let's see what else we had. I guess someone said any implications for Spring Boot. I don't know
Um,
what you mean by
I'm
implications.
not sure if I understand the question
Okay.
well, but it's not only for Node. Huh?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's simulating an API. It's using Express.js behind the scenes, so it's based on Node.js, but it's a desktop application, and the CLI is an npm package. But it's something that should run outside of your main application, if I can say that. So it's not mocking. It's not test mocking, or mocking classes, functions, etc. I mean, mocking is also used for that. So we need to avoid mixing up. So it's not a library that will be compatible with Java or Spring Boot. I know that some tools like, I don't remember if it's Wire Mock or are Java libraries. But here it's a desktop application and a CLI, an npm application.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. My apologies. I didn't know too much about Spring Boot, so I was like, maybe this will be uh familiar to you. Someone said, and yeah, good clarification too, because I do think some people are thinking testing mocking rather than just like API mocking. Someone said, is it possible to store the Mockoon configuration in a repository and let others use the same mock setup?
Yes,
Oh,
yes. And in the documentation, there is a page for that. Yeah, let's go back to the application very quickly. The idea is that all the setup, all your Mockoon setup is a JSON file. I mean, for each API. So here I have only one API that has been created. So it's one JSON file, and you can share that. So right click, show in folder, and then you leave it there if you want, but you can also, you will have to close it and reopen it, but you can also move it in a Git tracked folder and then you push, pull, and that's it.
awesome,
And
awesome.
a lot of people are doing that right now. I know it's working quite well.
Yay, that's really good. This question is more for me, I guess. And I guess a lot of people are like, we can't see, but that's okay. Yes, the open source sessions are recorded for viewing later. We do have this on YouTube. If you go to GitHub's YouTube channel, we have it on Twitch and we have it on LinkedIn. If you want to rewatch once you get to your desktop or computer, because I know some of you are on mobile. Someone asked, can it run? And maybe I'll do three more questions and then move to a few that I had for you. Someone said, can it run multiple mock API configs simultaneously?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So you can create a new one. No, maybe it was too fast. Sorry. So there is this button, new environment, and you just save it somewhere. I just save it in the same folder, and then you have another one, and it's running on a different port, and you can, yeah, the CLI is running, so I cannot run this one, but you can run them in parallel, for example, and that's it. And you have two mock APIs running, and you can, for example, duplicate routes from one environment to another. You can also, what is very practical, I mean, it's not part of this question, but you can, for example, just right click and copy the JSON that is stored in the file, or copy the root JSON. So you can just, for example, copy paste and send that on Discord or Slack to a coworker. And then your coworker can do something like root, add root from clipboard. Sorry, I know it's a little bit small now. Or file, new environment from clipboard. So it's very easily shared like that. Or if you are teaching, for example, it's very practical. You create a mock API and you copy the JSON and you give that to the students on the chat.
Awesome. Yeah. Sorry that I had you repeat yourself. Probably also some people may be watching a little bit after, like they might have joined in afterwards. A few people are asking, like, does it support YAML format for the configuration repo? And then someone else also asked, can it import Swagger YAML?
Yes, so there is this import export feature that is like the bridge between Mockoon and OpenAPI. And it's supporting Swagger, so the version 2, and OpenAPI, which is version 3, up to 3.1 something.
Wow.
Well, lately I had some issue with the parsing of the very recent things, so it needs a bit of love in the future, in the coming months. But yeah, you can import and it will recreate all the endpoints, and then you can also export your API mock, and then it will create an open API specification with some limitations right now, because there is no like live synchronization between the two. And there is no merge that is possible yet. So there are issues, so do not hesitate to upvote them. And it's also not our one equivalent with all the features, because some features has no equivalent in OpenAPI. For example, the rules cannot be reproduced in OpenAPI. And some OpenAPI things are not handled by Mockoon. And Mockoon is an API mocking tool, so it's handling the response. So for example, you cannot describe the request, because we don't really care about the request. There are rules that can react to the request, etc. But there is no place here to say, I expect my request to have this kind of headers, etc. Because it will be just documentation. And it's not something that we are doing right now in Mockoon. It can come in the future, who knows? But not right now. So don't use that as a way to share that with your coworkers, because some information may be lost, especially the one that is not compatible with the other specification.
That makes a
Just to
lot of
clarify.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this that clarification was really great. And the last question I'll ask, until, I mean, people may have more questions, that's fine, but out of this bunch that I've starred, is how does Mockoon handle pagination?
But this the question is how you handle the pagination. No,
Mm,
I mean, if you use very simple endpoints like a get endpoint here,
yeah.
the pagination has to be done by you, which means that here you need some sort of rule that is reacting to the query param. For example, if page is 1, if page equals 2, etc. And then you serve a different response. Or you use a switch case, for example.
Oh.
If you have a basic get, post, put, root, because they are all stateless also, they are completely independent. And if you have CRUD roots, and honestly, I don't remember if I coded that or not. If it's handling the pagination. Yeah, it's handling the pagination. We are safe. So it's like JSON server if you are used to that. When you create a CRUD root, so if you remember, new root, CRUD root, and then the CRUD root has to be linked to a data bucket. And the data bucket can be as simple as an empty array. You could, of course, put some seeding data or some fake data that will be created at the beginning. And then all the endpoints are created automatically. So /invoices, /invoices, /ID with put, post, delete, get, patch, etc. And if you add the query params, you have sort and order, and pagination, page limit. So you can simulate pagination with this. Yeah, and just one remark here. It's also supporting the templating system that you can see here. No, here, sorry. So it means that, for example, with a small template, you can generate like 5,000 fake users. With a repeat, for example, you could do something like repeat 5,000, etc. And then when you start the server, it will generate this data once and for all. So you get randomized data every time, and then it's stateful. So between all the requests, it keeps the state and it keeps your database, I mean, as is.
This is awesome. Thank you. And I think that was a good answer, right? Like it has support for pagination, I guess, but it's up to
Yeah.
you on how you're designing your API. Um what So I'm gonna quickly switch into like less about the demo and about the product and more about like your open source journey since we're at the 40-minute mark. And one of the questions I usually ask people is like, what are the challenges that you encounter as a maintainer? Because oftentimes we're like, be a founder, be a maintainer, without like preparing people or telling them about the struggles that you may face. So I'm curious from your perspective, well,
Yeah.
what challenges you face?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would make a parallel with my journey, as a legal advisor and then switching careers. It took a lot of time, a lot of dedication, a lot of learning, and I know that I know nearly nothing when I see all the new and shiny tools on Twitter and everywhere. I mean, it's so overwhelming, and you are constantly learning. And I mean, it's not easy. It's like doing a boot camp. You are there 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then what after? I mean, you still need to learn a lot. And I taught in the past in a boot camp here in Luxembourg, and it's a big challenge. And I think open source is a bit like that. It's very easy to start. It's not very easy to stop. Um, I mean that's my impression. I started that as a side project, and the feedback was very good. Yeah, mostly very good, like 99%. I didn't expect that. I would expect people to roast my project and say, yeah, but why? I mean, why are you doing that? And and I was so pumped up, to see that I worked on it for years, and then I suffered a burnout in 2021 because it's a bit overwhelming, all the issues that are opened every day, the support questions, and you want to, I mean, at least I want to do it right. I want to give stellar support. I want to help people. I want that they're happy to use Mockoon. I don't want them to be stuck and say, okay, what's the deal with this tool? I cannot use it. And I know I learned to deal with this and release the pressure, because I mean there is no emergency and nobody needs that. Nobody had that in the past, so nobody needs it right now. I mean, it could disappear and we will all be fine. So I'm dealing with that now. But what is overwhelming is that, especially for Mokun, I mean, maybe not at the beginning, but I have huge ambitions. I wanted to stay an open source project because this is what I believe in. Um, but facing this amount of work, and I got help from contributors, but it's not always easy to code, on a project that is not your own. And a lot of them started and couldn't finish because of personal reasons, too much work elsewhere. So it's not easy for someone from the outside to take on my code that maybe not that clean. And so it's still mainly a one person thing, and I have big ambitions. That's why also I will release this SaaS, software as a service offering, soon. It's not to transform Mokun is in something that you need to pay for, because it will stay open source. But to release also a little bit of pressure, I choose to quit my job 2 years ago, 2 years and a half now. So quitting your job doesn't bring any money. Yeah? I mean, probably it's obvious, but so it's a complicated choice to make. So I was supported by my family, of course, but it's still a bit overwhelming. So I wanted to become an awesome open source project with a huge amount of users, but some of them who can pay, for example, for optional services, enterprise paying for support, priority support, etc. So I can continue working on that full time. Because the
Awesome.
other, yeah, because the other solution is, just to, how can I say that? Lower the amount of hours I'm spending on this project, and it's not something I want to do because I really believe in what I'm building here. But it's a bit overwhelming. So it's very good. You can exchange with a lot of people. You meet people, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
Just be careful; it can be overwhelming, and it's good to be prepared because you will put pressure on yourself if you start an open source project. It's sure.
Yeah.
It's just finding the right balance, and maybe, I mean, some people can work on an application in their free time for decades. um, it was not my case, so you have to find what is working for you. That's very important, and to find the right balance because it's still very demanding.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you want to do things right, so you want to do all the code, all the features, fix all the bugs, answer all the support requests, etc. And do the marketing stuff like the logos and writing tutorials, because if you don't write tutorials, I mean, people are not coming, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
um it's a journey.
Yeah, and no, first off, I do want to highlight something from Learner 0418. They said I guess from listening to you, they said I hope your efforts bring you both lots or bring both of you lots of success. And
Thank you.
I thanks for your transparency as well. I think those are all fair points of like first you were nervous to or you weren't sure how people will react. You were like maybe they will roast me because I think that's a lot of people's nervousness about building and learning in public. They're like what are people going to think about this? And then it felt rewarding for you to have people have such awesome feedback and then you're like I want to continue supporting them. But it's hard to be the you're essentially the software engineer, the engineering manager, the support, like customer support, you're everything. And then you
Yeah,
don't even really have like a consistent team of engineers because the contributors are all doing this for free. So you can't be like, you have to get this work done because they're doing
exactly.
this out of their free time. So that's
Yeah,
all fair stuff. And then you're right, like about like the balance, because everybody has different things going on in their life. Like you might have kids or you might have like other stuff that you have to attend to that you can't always just be doing your work. So thank you for that transparency as well.
thank
Um,
you.
and someone said, so maybe you've already done this. I'm curious. So one of the questions I do ask actually are like any advice for how you try to gain more contributors and sponsors and users for your open source projects.
Yeah. So I'm part with Mockoon of the GitHub Accelerator, and this is the main topic we are discussing like every week. And it's very complicated, and it really depends for each project. It's very, I mean, it depends on the project. It depends on your audience, the kind of users you attract. Um, Surprisingly, I learned during 5 years that Mokun attracts a lot of, how can I say that, maybe traditional companies. So you can see their logo on the websites like Ford, Walmart, and they are not very used, for example, to sponsoring open source projects, or they don't necessarily have this kind of program, open source founding program. And they also don't do joint marketing. So when you ask for some joint, blog article, they say no, PR will never accept, etc. Um, and I think some other projects attract a lot of solo developers, that are very active on social networks. So, and I think this has an influence on everything: the type of contributions you get, the frequency of the contributions, the time people can spend on the project, the amount of sponsors you get, and yeah, so I think it's very different for each project. I mean, what works, I guess, it's creating something that is good. It seems obvious. It's like build it and they will come, which is wrong. It's not working. Still, if you build something that is good and then you do some marketing, and for me marketing is mainly writing article for SEO because I'm very bad with social networks. I feel like a fraud. I have nothing to say. I just don't know what to say. And so it brings new people, and I think they stay because the product is good. And what I noticed also is that most of the sponsors or donations I got are from people who got support, uh, to whom I answered support requests in time, solving their issue, etc. So I think giving stellar support is also a way to get more sponsors. Then I think it's very important to ask. It's not solving all the problems, but it's important to write everywhere that you need the sponsoring. You need a sponsor to just pay your time on the project. And yeah, so I think you need to talk about it and not hesitate also when someone is helping you, especially if it's from a company, to say, okay, I spent some time with you, and I mean, try to push your company to maybe help us a little bit. Not necessarily a donation, but like an internal workshop, uh, a tweet if they have an engineering team that is tweeting, any kind of support. That's already awesome.
Yeah, no, these are a lots of good points, and actually very different from what I usually hear, because I was never thinking from the enterprise section. Like usually the advice I always give people is like someone here was asking, have you ever like um streamed yourself coding on Twitch and stuff like that? I'm usually like, just go learn in public. But I didn't even think about the fact that there's like these enterprise companies that may not really want to do like collaborations with you. And then a lot of them are probably not sitting down watching Twitch all day. I
Yeah,
always think from more of like an open source sense, like a lot of people in open source, they're watching Twitch, they're tweeting and stuff like that. But these are lots of good points of like if you want enterprise support, and that's where more of the money is. They're not really used to sponsoring, so things like actually responding to their issues in time and stuff like that actually can increase the amount of sponsorship and contributions you get. And then just being transparent and being like, hey, I have a sponsors thing, it'll really help if you could support me so that I can continue to support you on the flip side.
yeah. This is. I mean, this is the kind of things that are working.
Yeah.
And yeah, for example, for the story, the biggest donation in the past was from a US company using Mockoon. Like they have 50 Mockoons, if I can call them like that, deployed in their CI to mock clients' APIs. And they did a big donation at that time because I also helped them a lot with support.
Wow.
And also we started coding the CLI uh, a bit. We prioritize a bit the CLI for them. I mean, it was very good for the project anyway, but I mean, they needed it, so we
Yeah.
did some kind of agreement like that. So this can work too. And enterprise support is something that a lot of companies are doing. And
Yeah.
just to answer the question about live coding, I don't know. I feel like a fraud first, and second, I have a very strange way of coding. I mean, I cannot code more than, I don't know, 5 minutes straight, and then I have to think for 1 hour about what I will do next. Or so I'm not sure it's really interesting. But I thought about doing some office hours, like on Friday or something like that, maybe in the coming weeks. That could be great. So
I think that's a great idea, and I think I understand you. I'm still trying to train myself on how to live code on Twitch, but I'm very bad at it because I can't really think when everybody is watching. I don't know why. As soon as the Twitch comes off, I'm like, oh, I know what to type. But when I in the moment, I forget little stuff. Like I'll be like, how do you state again? I'm like, I like forget like the smallest little things. So I relate with you on that. Um, let me see. Oh, how can we kind of talked about how people can contribute to your project already, where whether they can do like issues. Is there anything else you wanted to elaborate on people contributing to your project for you?
no, I guess aside from the fact that any contribution is welcome. just some feedback on that feature, what you think. There are some people that are here from the beginning, and for example, sometimes where there is a new feature, they say, no, this doesn't make sense for me in
Mhm.
Mockoon. And I also want to refuse sometimes features because I don't want Mockoon to become, cluttered with buttons everywhere. So I think there are some features that are, let's say, silent or harmless, like a new templating helper for handlebars. You don't see it. So if you use it, it's good. If you don't, nobody knows that it's here. But if it's a new button, a new menu, a new tab, a new huge thing in the app, usually it's okay. Let's see if it makes sense. And just saying that, yeah, it makes sense, or I mean, for us, it will be very good, or no, don't do that because it's not the main purpose of this tool, etc. It's already very helpful. And then, of course, you can try to, to get your hands on some features. Now it's 5 years old, so a lot of the features here are quite big, I must say. So it's not easy. I don't have a good first issue, tag, but feel free to ping me on Discord, for example, and ask me if there is something that is easy enough to begin with, because the code is also quite big. There is a big mono repository, so there are a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. So I will be glad to take, to give you a tour and.
Yeah. So it's more of a advanced repository. Sometimes we have different sizes of projects that come in. Sometimes it's in a beginner stage, but yours is a little bit more advanced. But if they want to try, they can. They can.
Yeah.
Um, let's move into some of. Actually, I think I can maybe ask one more question, and I think, are you okay with answering the question around the GitHub Accelerator program?
Yes, sure.
Cool. Yeah. So, I know when the GitHub Accelerate program first came out, I think I did a Twitch stream explaining what it was. A lot of people were excited to join, and I think some people didn't get in. So, like when I was doing open source Fridays for some time, some people were like, "Why didn't I get in? Who's getting chosen? Whatever." So I'm curious, like in your application process and you getting in, what do you think really made your application stand out? What do you think made the folks choose you, maybe, and like any advice for people that would apply for an upcoming year?
Hmm. I don't know. No, I have to be honest, because I also tried to apply to like Y Combinator, etc. And I
Mm.
think the deadline is today, so it's 26. Yeah, so I probably not inside the next cohort of Y Combinator, but no, GitHub Accelerator. It's a fantastic opportunity, and it was a complete surprise. I mean, I was going to bed because here there is a huge time zone difference, and I got an email, and I thought it was a scam, like, you are accepted in GitHub Accelerator. And I say, what is this? Because it was in March or April or March maybe, and I applied in November or October or November, and I didn't even remember. Um, I mean, of course, I tried to fill the form the best I could and explain where I'm going with this project and what I believe in. Like, I believe in open source, and I believe also in sustainability in open source, because it's a lot of this drawing. I think it's a XKCD with like all the bricks standing on a very tiny thing, and our whole industry is like that. Everything on the shoulders of maintainers. Maybe my app is not that critical, but it's like that. So I think explaining where you are going with the project, and that you have a plan for the project, because I think it's also what GitHub Accelerator expected from us, to have a plan for the project. It's not only open source for the sake of it. It's open source, but it has to be sustainable, because otherwise, you see what happened to um, Core.js or projects like that. It's nightmares. I mean, especially for the contributors. So yeah, I think explaining the best you can. It's also it was simpler than like a Y Combinator application. I think the form was way simpler, but still it's kind of the same questions. who is on the team. I mean, the team is important. Where are you going on with this? Where are you right now? Where do you want to be in several months? What are your ambitions for this project, and how you want to reach this point? And I did a video. I'm not really proud of that video, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It worked. I'm so glad it worked. But and also there are, I mean, 20 projects, 30 people, and we are all very different. And I think GitHub Accelerator tried to take a lot of projects in various stages, earlier stages, like in the middle, like mine, and I mean, some projects that are already far behind. No, in front of everybody else. I don't know. And yeah, I think the diversity was probably very important for this cohort.
Yeah, no, I did notice there's diversity of projects and diversity of like candidates as well, like
Yeah.
different races, different abilities, different genders, which is awesome. And I think you I mean, I didn't see your application, but I think you probably did an awesome job because I saw your submission for open source fund, and I think you do a good job at like showing your passion and showing that like you're dedicated to the community. And I really like that what you said about having a plan, because I think it's like, okay, you're maybe not like an open source project that's like deep like Django or something like that has like so many millions of users, but you do have like a user base and you have a vision of where you want to go next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, I mean, that's my opinion, but I think it's also important when you work on the project to, I mean, not since the beginning I said, but I already had ambitions for this project, especially when I saw like the monthly active users climbing during the years. So I always try to do, I mean, perfection doesn't exist. I'm not saying that what I do is perfect, far from it, but a clean website, clean tutorials, and up-to-date documentation. All the screenshots are all nearly always up to date. Every time I push a new version, like the wording is normally clean everywhere, even if English is not my first language, and I try to get everything right. Um, and I think this depends also on the kind of projects you want. If you want to keep it open source and that's it, and if you are ready to work on it without necessarily create a SaaS around this, like I'm currently doing, maybe you don't need a website that is a crazy website. Probably the repository is enough. There are a lot of, but I think it's good that you keep the consistency.
I completely agree. There's a couple of comments, and then I think we're nearing the end, so I'll ask like the non-technical questions that should be pretty fast. Someone said it was great. It's great to learn that you like support new contributors by giving them a tour. We have Brandon, who's your
Ah,
your cohort mate, saying
hey,
like.
Brendan.
All right. So last couple of questions. What is the first programming language that you learned? I think you
C++.
talked about C++.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, in high school, C++ with OpenGL. Yeah,
Awesome.
long time ago.
Um, if money was an issue, and I think this, I already know your answer maybe, but let's just see. If money was an issue, how would you ideally spend your time, job wise or not job wise?
If
I
money
was,
wasn't an issue,
yeah,
I think I will just like work on things I like, like, I mean, if it's Mockoon, it's still Mockoon, but if it's something else, like a new project, and then I will just stop and do some woodworking or cook something. And the freedom of, it's a bit like remote work
yeah,
without the work. It's like remote. You do whatever you want, whenever you want. And then, I mean, I love coding. So I wouldn't probably stop.
yeah, that's fair, and
Yeah.
I get that. Oh, I think I changed this question the other day when I was talking to Simon. So if you don't want to answer it, it's okay. But I think last week when he was talking to us, he talked about like every day he tries to learn something new and write what he learned that day. And I think I had changed it. I forgot to change it back for you. But if you're okay with answering, is there anything cool that you learned today? Or even if it's not that cool.
No, today, no. Today I learned that there are a lot of bugs in my SaaS thing. So that's not cool. This is what I learned today. If the scope is today, this is what I learned.
Yeah.
So it was quite a bad day because I started testing in production like environment, and then it was a mess, and I was like, oh my god, not again. It's the 80%, 20%. The 20% at the end are a nightmare.
Yeah.
So now what I learned recently, hmm, yeah, I mean writing prompts for Chat GPT, for example, for the next feature,
Yeah.
using Nest JS, not Next, but Nest JS. So something new.
That's cool.
Not too many new things because I mean you need time for that, and I mean my goal, the why I'm doing this is still to earn money at one point, so I cannot just procrastinate learning everything. But I tried always to add some, some salt so I can learn something new and go out of my comfort zone.
That's cool. I love that. And I understand the 80-20%. That is why I'm not a good software engineer and I'm better at developer advocacy. I always like when I was a software engineer, I just would start doing the project. I'll get to the 80%. I wouldn't want to do the 20%. So like it's just much easier as a developer advocate. I like create like a prototype. I'm like, this is cool, but ignore all the bugs.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah, true, true. I have this the opposite way. Every time I need to do something like marketing related, like write a tutorial. I mean, for me, it's marketing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I write most of the copy and then I have, to rewrite the sentences and proofread and this is the last part. So sometimes the draft is for days in sitting on my computer and I just don't want to do it.
Completely understand. All right. How do you pronounce the word GIF? Do you say GIF or GIF?
Yeah, I know GIF. That's the official way. I mean,
Yes.
the
Me too.
creator of the GIF said that.
He said
So
it was called GIF. Some people are like, it's GIF. No.
no, no, impossible.
Okay. And you said you don't have a favorite Beyonce song, but what is your favorite song?
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm not listening to Beyonce. No, I mainly, you will find me crazy, but I'm mainly listening to Iron Maiden since I'm a kid.
Interesting. Okay.
So all of their songs are my favorite one,
Yeah.
and I listen to a lot of 90s hip hop,
Gotcha.
NWA and things like that. I mean, I don't have a song in mind right now, but I love hip hop. So I mean, and I love Iron Maiden. It's completely, I mean, it's unrelated, but yeah.
I love it. No, that was great. I always ask that just for fun, just to learn more about the maintainer. All right, so we've reached the end of this Twitch stream. I really appreciated like hanging out with you. Sorry. I appreciate hanging out with you and also the people in the comments as well. Sorry, I was like reading them at the same time. I saw
Me
someone
too.
say it's Jif, not Jif. But thank you for the engagement, y'all. And then also Guillaume, thank you for your time. People are saying thank you as well to you. Thank you for your time and your knowledge, sharing this with us. I know you're in a completely different time zone and it's evening time for you. So appreciate it and thanks for
It's
doing the
okay.
demo. Just last call to people, if you do want to contribute or check out the site, go to github.com/Mockoon or go to Mockoon.com for the documentation and YouTube tutorials. Is there any last thing you want to say, Guillaume?
Yeah, but thank you for having me, and thank you, I mean, for this opportunity, and for the people who join us. Thank you for joining and asking all these questions. And if you have questions, I mean, just come on Discord, GitHub discussion. I mean, I'm going to vacation the next week, but I may answer because I have some meetings. So I will be really happy to exchange and discuss with you.
Awesome. All right, y'all. Bye. Have a
Yeah,
great
thank
day.
you. Have a nice day.